it's a hard business to be part of, and especially when you're building it from scratch. I came from corporate where I had all the resources and tools, and then I'm on my own. And it was really confronting because there's no one coming to help you. You've got to earn your business every day. And what I learned was that the biggest point of differentiation for consultants is not what they do in their current workshop. It's what happens after the workshop is over. That's what I found was the biggest missing link.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chelsea Norstead, Goalster's Head of Sales, and we're doing something very, very special today. It's our first huddle for coaches and consultants, and we're so excited to have everyone here. So please, if you can, use that chat function. We love engagement, and we have teammates on standby to answer any question that you may have. And just to make sure everyone's awake today, if you can, throw an emoji, a hello, or anything in the chat, and we'll get started. Awesome. And we do have a very special guest today, Darren Webster, founder and CEO of Goalster. Hey, Darren, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing really well. Good to be here. This live thing is a little nerve-wracking. It adds an element of danger that I like, but hopefully we'll get through this okay.
Yeah, heart's racing, but super excited to be here with everyone. And just to recap, we're going to have a candid conversation with Darren today around his journey into being a consultant, some of the lessons learned along the way, and best practices to make that journey a little bit easier for today's coaches and consultants. So Darren, a lot of us know you from your Verizon days. I know myself included. I started working with you, I think about 8 years ago, worked with you for about 4 years, and then followed you to Goalster. So for those of us like me, can you tell us how and why you got into coaching?
Thank you. It's been great to work with people that I had some familiarity with and who sort of understood the world that we worked in at Verizon, because it was such a big change when I left the company. But getting into consulting and coaching was more by accident. I'd planned on riding my career out through Verizon and going basically as high as I could. But circumstances were that I lived in a place and had a certain job that was surplus to requirements, and unless I moved to New Jersey, I was going to have to find something else. And so what I had at that point was a critical decision. Do I go off on my own? I had to have a severance, I'd have experience, and I had this itch that I needed to scratch. And so it was a unique opportunity to get pushed into the consulting and coaching world. And so that was really what caused it. At that point, it was a call on my 40th birthday, first day of vacation. We don't have a spot for you unless you're prepared to move into headquarters. And ultimately, then I had to figure out, okay, well, what's next? And what I wanted to do initially was, as I said, this itch that I needed to scratch. There were things that I really enjoyed doing about my role that I wanted to keep doing and ideally make a business out of. And so that was really the catalyst of doing it. But then, the experience of actually going through the process was something totally different.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that experience. I assume it's a big change going from corporate to consulting. Tell us a little bit more about that transition and what it felt like making that jump.
Well, I can tell you, it was definitely the most humbling experience that I've ever had. So in Verizon, I was fairly senior. I had plenty of resources. When you work in companies like that, everything's sort of handed to you. And then all of a sudden you leave and you're no longer Darren Webster, head of national strategy for distribution. You're Darren Webster consultant versus everyone else that's out there. And it became very clear that my track record and experience at Verizon didn't count for as much as perhaps I thought. And so having to then go and build this up and by the way, doing it all yourself, because I had lots of resources at a company like that, but then it's all on you now. And so there was a lot of, it was an abrupt sort of baptism of fire into the role. And then what I also found was there was this whole thing about LinkedIn and a whole host of activities and things that you had to do in that environment that were just foreign to me. Because before it was just internal, I just had to look after my internal stakeholders and my teams. But then outside of that, you've got to differentiate, and that was very difficult.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a brave move for anyone to go out on their own, especially someone who's been successful and has so much that people can learn from. So I know that you had to have done a ton of things well, but give us a few examples of things that you did really well that maybe other people can take and start implementing themselves.
Is when you first get out and you start to think about what is the value that I deliver to either an individual or to companies, and where I wanted to focus, given my background was in sort of organizational leadership, I wanted to build something that would allow not just an individual to propel themselves forward, but a whole
Mhm.
organization at the same time. And so that was part of the experience that we had at Verizon that shaped kind of my programs, the things that I built. So we had great experience, great use cases, and great results to back us up. But then
Mhm.
programs that we knew could deliver that. And then I also had a professional network of folks that were in and outside of Verizon that presented a really good way to get started, get some leads, and get the business moving. But obviously, then you've got to continue to build something that's far more sustainable, and that's where the next challenge came.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, you jumped right into it for me. There's a lot of great things like you had the backing behind you, the program, the experience to really go out and teach people, and you wanted to make a difference. You utilized your network to even go further than that. You touched on challenges a little bit, and I know that going out on your own can't be easy. So on the other side, the lessons learned, those are typically the ones that stick with you the hardest. If you could go back and tell yourself to do anything differently, what would that be?
So there'd be a couple of things, and for most people when they go into this environment, LinkedIn becomes a huge part of their business. You've got
Mhm.
to It's really the only vehicle to get out and to distinguish yourself in the public marketplace, but it is a huge time suck. You've got to put content out there, and then you've got to create content, and then you've got to follow up on those pieces of content. So it becomes almost like a job in itself to differentiate your business. What I found is that a lot of that is meaningless. And ultimately, what I should have done first was establish a really strong focus on SMB, particularly, and the executives who were really part of our target market. So the executives that I wanted to speak to were SMB that had a small team of 10, 15, 20 that we could wrap into a platform and into a program and help everyone get better. So that would be where I'd focus as opposed to the individual coaches. That is, to me, a pretty unsustainable model. The second thing that I do is I'd focus on the goals of the companies versus the program that I had. That was a learning. It was all about my secret sauce, if you will, and the things that I was able to present. And that's not the way to approach this as a sales professional. You want to focus on the goals that the customer has, and then wrap your services around that. And because the one thing that I did find was that not everyone cared about my particular programs, but they all had goals that they wanted to achieve. And the sooner I got to that, i.e., the goals that we're working on, the more important I was to that particular company or that individual. And then the last thing that I would say is the key is you can't just have a one-off connection or a series of connections via conference calls that's sustainable. There has to be something that entrenches you either into the business itself or into the operations that makes you almost inextricably linked to that company's success. And so if I was to, again, do it over, I'd spend far less time on LinkedIn chatting. I would focus more on SMB and establish repeatable structure there, and then be able to really, once I had that business customer, wrap an entire program that was customized to them around their goals, as opposed to just the things that I think I'm good at. I think those are the learnings.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean that makes total sense. Any time that I've been at any company, and Verizon, otherwise, we did have consultants, coaches come in, and it felt like when we were in those trainings, we got so much out of it. Right? Everyone's excited, they're engaged, but when they left, it wasn't something that we talked about as much. So I 100% get that. How do you make it sustainable? Right? So just repeating kind of some of your challenges is it's hard to build this sustainable model. We're trying so hard to differentiate ourselves with our secret sauce. And how do we make this, I would say, scalable? Is that fair, Darren?
Yeah, that's it. It's really about how do you differentiate your services and your offerings to the specific people who care. The next thing is how do you not only deploy it. It's one thing to have a coaching session or to run a workshop, but the
Mhm.
most important thing is what happens after that. That's what they're paying you for. is to be able to change something in the behavior of the individual or the execution of the team that delivers the result that they want. And so if all I was focused on was how well I delivered this particular program, but I had nothing that sustained the fundamentals of it, then I'm really not delivering the kind of value that the customer's after. And so that was where, it really becomes, how do I solidify myself, my processes, and the methodology even that I have into structural, tangible action that is sustained over time.
Okay. And I guess question of the day, having these issues, recognizing these issues, being a leader at Verizon, obviously you probably noticed these things happening. So what did you do to try to solve for these issues initially?
Well, unfortunately, the technology that's available wasn't particularly sophisticated, and so most consultants, certainly when I first started, everything was on spreadsheets. There was manual follow-up. You've got the coaching starter pack, if you will, is a Zoom call, an Excel spreadsheet, a PowerPoint presentation of your content, and that. And so I had some of this stuff, but what I kept coming back to was just, this isn't enough. This isn't going to get me the kind of customer I wanted, and it's not going to cement what we're doing into that customer's work so that it becomes sustainable, and ultimately then I have predictable recurring revenue. And so with just on a spreadsheet, that just wasn't going to be good enough. I couldn't play at the level that I wanted to. And what I ended up coming to the conclusion of was, I've got all this content, I've got these spreadsheets, but what I don't have is my own delivery mechanism to be able to take what I've got here and not just impart it on others when I'm on the conference call or when I'm in front of them, but each day in their pocket. And so we sort of built Goalster originally as a coach in the pocket, because I sat there in this very chair, at the sort of most frustrated point, thinking to myself, this isn't good enough, and I need my own app to be able to deploy this so that it can scale. I can go to bigger customers, and I can not just deal with one or two individuals, but wrap 200 around a goal that allows us to really drive ROI to that business.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so to sum that up a little bit, some tips and tricks, that you wish you'd know sooner. So it sounds like pivoting, figuring out how to build this recurring revenue model, incorporating technology, being that coach in their pockets. So like me, once I learn a training, that there's some follow-up after to make sure I'm still retaining that material and doing those behaviors that we talked about. And so I guess we talked a little bit about that covers scale sustainability, but for differentiating, how do you differentiate? What do you use to do that?
Well, ultimately, as I said, with the learnings, originally I would have established more structure around sales, and I'm not a great salesperson. I freely admit that, and that's why I have people like you who do this really well, because it's far more science than art. And most consultants, they're not great salespeople. They love what they do and they're passionate about it, but there is something about structure and organization around lead gen, particularly around the target market, that would already set someone up for a good funnel that's sustainable. Then you can iterate on that. So as you're changing your messages, which we've had to, because we've learned so much more about Goalster, we've now adjusted that so we're being more effective in that lead gen. And then once we have a platform that allows us to deliver the services and then be able to retain our customers for longer and get them on an either monthly recurring revenue cycle or an annual recurring revenue cycle, you then break through that last sustainability hurdle. So you're differentiated through a platform that has your secret sauce in it. You then can scale to bigger customers that are more predictable and obviously higher yield. And obviously then you can sustain that over time and create that long-term recurring revenue that pretty much is the holy grail for consultants, because there's only so many hours a day I can be on calls, and there's only so many coaching sessions I can run, and there's only so many workshops, particularly in a post-COVID distributed workforce. Companies have no appetite to start bringing loads of people back together at significant expense if they don't need to. And so there must be some other way to be able to have that sort of impact at an organizational level, as opposed to I'm just on Zoom calls all day. That to me was just unacceptable.
Yeah. And you might have already answered my own question, but I mean, whenever I think about this, there's been coaches around forever. And, granted now there's a ton of coaches out there who coach for so many different things. Why do you think it's necessary now in this landscape to do something like build a scalable, repeatable process or incorporate tech?
I mean, the coaching and consulting business hasn't changed much. I mean, we have customers who are coming on board who are consulting firms that have been around for 80 years, and they pretty much operate the same way. But the seismic shift that happened with COVID was that not everyone's in the same room anymore. They consume things differently. We've now got a different generation that are taking the reins of these companies, and they don't want spreadsheets and binders anymore. They want something that's immediate, that can be trackable, that they can see ROI and get some sort of intrinsic benefit immediately, as opposed to, we had a great course, great class, loved the presenter, and then I just don't do anything with it, which is, as you've mentioned earlier on, kind of the core struggle, I think, is what happens afterwards. And we've been through, in my whole 15 years at Verizon, I went through countless trainings. I can remember 2 of them, because what resulted from that was a change in my behavior that stuck with me. And so that's the difference that we've always seen. And that's the business that I wanted to build, was something sustainable there.
Yeah. And for people who want to do the same thing, right? For people who want to build a sustainable business and get into tech, what are some steps they can take to build this system?
Well, I think the first ones that I took, I investigated companies who really focused on lead gen automation. That was an important sort of bucket of building this strong business. Obviously, I built Golster because the rest of it just didn't exist. You can put things on, say, Kajabi and have a course that's out there, but it's very passive. It requires someone to go there as well and then have to get through all that. But if I was able to, like, I wanted to create my own app that allowed me to deliver it on my terms and in the way that I wanted, all of a sudden that app could then be scaled so that either other consultants or other companies can be brought into the platform. And that's where I would recommend first for consultants. Get something that really automates lead gen, work with people who can help you refine your message. But then as a starter pack, have something like Golster that allows you to deliver your services in a way that can sustain and can scale. If you don't do that, you really are isolating yourself into what I would consider an unscalable business model, where you have to keep going for the next coaching client. And if they drop off, then you've got to find another one. And that's not always that easy to do. So that's where we feel there's a better way. And certainly what I created in the midst of my frustration and pain was hopefully one component of that.
Yeah. And so building Golster, let's talk a little bit more about that, because that came, like you said, from your frustration. And I think a lot of really great things come from being pushed up against a wall or in a corner, because you're forced to just figure it out. So when you went and figured it out and you built Golster, was it, an easy feat, or what did you have to do to start building this technology? And when you built it, what did you have in mind?
So what I had in mind was, I didn't realize how long it would take, how much it would cost, and all the rest of it. But in the end, what I had in mind was I wanted to be able to ensure that there was a coach in the pocket of either the user or the organization that was a positive force driving them towards the behaviors and the outcomes that the company wanted, and that we could essentially program this thing to be the perfect coach in the pocket for those particular individuals. And that was the intent. But as you go through, and anyone who's created a SaaS startup will tell you, and that's why I was sort of, had a smile on my face. It'll always take longer than you think. It's twice as hard, 10 times more expensive. And so over the last 2 years, I've built and invested over $1.5 million in building something that not only would be me in someone's pocket, but it would allow all of our consulting partners to be able to have the same technology. And so our walking allows the consultants to get running. And so that's what we think we've built. But definitely, it's a story in and of itself. Thrilling and terrifying, I'll tell you.
And since we're on the topic of Golster, one of my favorite topics, being head of sales over here, what are some aspects of the app that you think can immediately impact other coaches and consultants?
I think the fact that it's actually really easy to set up is the first thing. The last thing consultants have is time, because they're juggling all these things. And so I needed to create, either for myself or for others, a platform that was easy to set up, easy to customize, and be able to, you could take the goal of an individual or an organization and wrap the entire platform around it. And so then you can sell subscriptions to your world that you've created. And that's all of a sudden now this extra value proposition that makes your overall prop richer. But also it allows you to have control over who comes into your platform, what they see. And so the immediacy of being able to set it all up was part and parcel of it. But that for customers who wanted to, or for people who want that, what we typically do with our customers is we do a planning session with them, what their business is, who their target customers are, and what they help them achieve, because that's what consultants are here for. They're paid to help the company or the individual achieve something. And so if we can provide the roadmap, the clear path to success, and then we can repeat that, all of a sudden we can go to the next company with a little bit of a nuance and then create almost the same experience but targeted to their particular goals. And so that's where I think the real benefit is to Golster. Is it's technology that allows a consultant to do things they can't do at a scale they cannot support right now, and create revenue that's recurring, which is the most difficult thing to do as a consultant.
Yeah. And it sounds like, and from using the app, I know firsthand, it's something that will be kind of a vehicle for the content and the items that you want to deliver based on a customer's goals. And like you said, coach in the pocket, I think, is the best way to put it. And is there anything else, Darren, any more tips, tricks, anything else we can get out of you to help other coaches and consultants?
Look, I probably not today. I think I think we've tapped me out, but essentially what we're trying to build here at Golster is a community of consultants and coaches who all share the same challenges. And we might not have the answer for all of them today, but what's more important is, as we group together, which is important, as if you want to have a thriving business, partnership with others is a good thing. If we can provide some of the tools that allow our consulting partners to grow sustainable businesses, then those learnings will continue to be shared along the way as part of that community, because whoever makes Golster a success should share in that success. And our job is to make sure that those who are using Golster not only achieve their goals, but help their clients achieve them too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what is it Jenna says? When you join Golster, your goals are our goals.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for getting on and having a candid talk with me today. And, I hope this conversation resonated with everyone. And if it did, please feel free to go and visit golster.com. We have a bunch of different modules, whether you're a business, coach, consultant, you want to be a partner. But if you're interested in learning how technology can help you scale your business, make it more sustainable, help you differentiate yourself from the competition, this is your way. And it's not just a form you can fill out. You can reach out to me, Darren, as well. And we hope to see you guys soon.
Thanks for having us, Chelsea.
Yep. Thanks so much. Bye.